Another wicked day of heat and humidity, and not a whole lot in the way of thunderstorms, although the radars have gotten busy up in New England. We'll be checking on that. Of course, Beryl, what's left of it, is now a non tropical or post tropical low that is moving through the Ohio Valley. Lots of flash flood watches, tornado watches, and there have been a number of tornado warnings this evening in parts of Kentucky and Tennessee. And of course, it's broiling once again in the western part of the United States. This is what happens when you have ridges off on both coasts and a trough in the middle. We are right here, centered on the Joe and Joe Weather Show podcast, brought to you by Tempest by Weatherflow. The revolutionary Tempest weather system is yours. And if you get one, you join the fastest growing observing weather network on this planet. The link is on the descriptor to this podcast. Use the coupon code.
Which is, of course, summer 2024.
And if you use said coupon code, you will receive
10% off.
correct.
off.
All right, so I have to tell you this
Okay.
because I you're going to love this. The latest conspiracy theory, or someone questioning whether there is a conspiracy, Joe, that the track of Beryl is almost identical to the track of the solar eclipse. And that
Oh,
all of this has been governed. This is all the deep state orchestrated, both the eclipse and the track of Beryl.
I never thought about that, but I'm not going to support the theory or the hypotheses, but you're right that the track is pretty close. It's not exact. I mean, for example, the total eclipse was visible over Dallas. It was not visible over Houston. And of course, we know Houston got the worst of it yesterday morning as Beryl came inland. But yeah, roughly speaking, it's pretty close to what the eclipse track was last April. I don't know whether or not people are thinking that it is the eclipse that is at fault with all of the rain and devastation that has occurred associated with Beryl, but I highly doubt it.
Just like of all the things to bring up to match those two events, is mind-boggling to me. Uh, by the way, I was reading someone's post saying that there were over 100 tornado warnings that were issued yesterday. Not that there were 100 tornadoes, but that there were 100 tornado warnings. And apparently, that's since they've been keeping records on the number of tornado warnings issued since 1986. It is a new record. Uh, Prior record was 67.
Wow. So if that's true, that particular record, this new record, beat the old record handily,
Handily, yes. Uh,
crushed
and,
it.
and the name Beryl will be retired. I mean, I can't see how it's not going to be retired. Four hurricane landfalls, a Category 5, uh, all the other things that have gone on with it. So it'll be no longer with us. Although I also did see on someone on a racing chat board, they're talking about Saratoga racing and were worried about rain. I don't know where this person was getting forecasts of up to a foot, going for saying there was going to be a foot of rain in Saratoga and it was going to rain for 5 days straight. Um, but he referred to Beryl as Burl, as in Ives.
Earl.
So of course me,
Milton Berle?
yeah, right. I corrected him that it was Beryl and not Burl. And then we started talking about Burl Ives' Oscar-winning performance in The Big Country in
By,
1958.
by the way, as you're speaking, I'm going through some of the tweets or some of the X's because I
All
am
right.
you have a thing, and I see this tweet from Nicholas Isabella, New York City storm chaser. Exactly what you were talking about, Joe. Has anyone noticed that Beryl has almost the same forecast path as the 2024 eclipse? Coincidence or another top secret government project gone rogue? Oh my God.
Oh, it's just too funny. Oh well. Anyway, um, actually, you and I are a conspiracy. because
Yeah.
after all, whatever we say goes. I mean, no matter, it's no coincidence. We know that they're watching us here Sunday through Thursday at 7:35 p.m. Right here on my YouTube channel. So if you want to be part of that group, make sure you subscribe to my YouTube channel, and then you can join everybody on the chat board, which is they get a big hello every night. And hello to everybody on the chat board. And if you like the show, hit the like button because we like to be liked. So another brutal day, and I've got the high temperatures uh, for today because the map resets at 8 o'clock. So if we don't do it before 8 o'clock, all the numbers will disappear. But 90, who's that? 99 in New Middlesex County, the RAWS station there, Joe, 99. Trenton, 95. Philadelphia, 97. Newark, 93. Now, oddly enough, yesterday it was in the low 90s on Long Island. Today, the only station here is a station up in Northport that got to 90. Everybody else was in the low and middle 80s. And even some of the city temperatures, LaGuardia only got to 88. And Kennedy only got to 82 because there was more of an onshore flow. Meanwhile, at the Mount Kisco station, Joe, it got to 91. At I don't know where this is. It's the USMA RAWS, whatever that is. They got to 93. Uh, Poughkeepsie, Dutchess County Airport, 94. And Newburgh got to 91. And Montgomery Orange County Airport got to 93. Scranton 95, just as a few other places here. Lancaster 97. Around Harrisburg, the Army Airfield northeast of Harrisburg got to 97. And Harrisburg, capital city airport, Joe, 99 degrees.
Well, that is something. But I still have something that can top that, and that was on this day 88 years ago, July 9th, 1936, the temperature at Central Park hit the all-time record for Central Park, 106 degrees. And when you factored in the humidity, Joe, it turned out that the heat index on that day was equivalent to 119 degrees. This all happened on this day, 1936.
Wow, I wasn't around for that.
No, that was about 20 years before I arrived. So,
Right.
uh,
Harry Reid International Airport in Las Vegas, Joe, 118 today. And they are now down, they've dropped. They're down to 117. Let's see. Boulder City. It's 115 in Boulder City for a high. And they should make this print bigger for people like me. I can't even pronounce this. PAH Pahrump is 115. And Nels Air Force Base in Indian Springs, 113, all in Nevada. And just let's take a look quick in California and see what's going on. You got a couple of 115s, a 115 in California City, California, and a 112 in Jawbone Canyon, California. Uh, Looks like the numbers might be just a shade lower today in California than they were yesterday, but a lot of hundreds going all the way up. It's going to move up the coast. It is definitely a little it's cooler today. You have to go pretty far inland because temperatures around the Bay Area and San Francisco are in the 60s and low 70s for highs. So you got to go well inland for the triple digit numbers. So we're looking at a lot of 100-degree readings in Northern California, and then moving up into Oregon. We've got Callahan, Oregon at 104. And Sawyer's Bar, California. That's an interesting name, 108. And Soames Bar, they're in competition with the Sawyer's Bar, 108. 105 at Dutch Indy, wherever that is. And 109 in Oak Knoll, I'm sorry, these are all in California still. Now I'm looking up in Oregon. Yeah, you get the idea, folks. It's burning up everywhere.
It is. There's no question that it's burning up everywhere. It's crazy. Um, the worst, of course, is out west. Although here in the east, I think we've cornered the market with the humidity, with the high level of dew point temperatures, which makes it just about as oppressive and just about as uncomfortable as what you would get out west, where we talked about yesterday. The extreme heat is being accompanied by relative humidity, anywhere from 3 to 6%. So
Yeah,
take your take your
take your
pick.
pick. Absolutely. Heat advisories from central New England all the way down to Georgia. There's a spattering of excessive heat warnings up too across central New Jersey, south parts of southeast PA, and also around the Washington, D.C., Baltimore area. I think BWE at Baltimore Airport, 99 for a high. Flood watches are up. And we should point this out. This could be potentially another serious situation for Vermont, particularly northern Vermont. But we've got flood watches in northeastern New York, central and northern Vermont, central and northern New Hampshire, and extending into Maine. And in fact, WPC, Joe, has a moderate risk. So that's a 40 to 70% chance for flash flooding from in northeastern New York, northern Vermont, and northern New Hampshire. I have a couple of friends that were posting from up there, weather friends, and they said everything's pretty saturated up there. So this is not going to be good if they put down two to the up to 4 inches of rain, which is what WPC seems to be indicating for that particular area. And we know what they went through last year.
Yes, they got walloped last year, and it looks like they're going to get walloped again. By the way, it was 1 year ago today. I pointed this out to Renata that we here in Putnam Valley received nearly 9 inches of rain, and in fact, the National Weather Service had issued some kind of a special alert, uh, emergency alert that they rarely have ever done or used to warn everybody about the intense rainfall that was going to be coming our way. So that was just 1 year ago. And today, of course, we haven't had a drop. There hasn't been a single. Now, there have been spotty areas of showers and even localized thunderstorms, mostly north and west of here, but most of the area today was bone dry with hot temperatures and high levels of humidity. So,
By the way, I meant to mention this in the last couple of days and I forgot, but on the 4th of July, the fireworks display, I saw the next day they had all these air quality alerts because of the let's call it the blow off from the Macy's fireworks. Apparently made for some pretty dirty air conditions on Friday, and that's lasted through this weekend and into and into the start of this week. So a cold front would be nice to just basically clean up the air. I gotta imagine that that's still an issue. It's there hasn't been much to move this air mass.
yeah. And as I just backing up a little bit to 1 year ago again, it was called a flash flood emergency, and it was issued for exceedingly rare situations where a severe threat to human life and catastrophic damage from a flash flood is happening or will happen soon. And then they added on to that, as if that wasn't enough, they said this is a life threatening situation. Do not even attempt to travel unless you are fleeing an area subject to flooding or under an evacuation order. It was 1 year ago. And as I said, when this was all over said and done, I had recorded just about 9 inches of rain and had flooding in my basement. It was terrible, horrible.
Was that another one that was on the list of things that weren't forecasted but was?
No, I don't think so.
And there, oh, okay. I'm just wondering. I was trying to. I don't have a good as good a memory as you do.
Well, this is from Facebook memories. Otherwise, it just
Oh,
jarred. And there was a wide swath from WPC that morning of moderate, not slight, but a moderate risk of flash flooding that covered all of eastern Pennsylvania, most of New Jersey, most of central and eastern New York, all the way up through the western sections of Connecticut, Massachusetts, and virtually all of Vermont. That was a pretty large swath, and I don't even remember what the weather situation is that caused that to occur. But it was. Let me just see here. Flooding caused by excessive rainfall continues to be possible. A slow-moving line of showers and thunderstorms. This is from NWS last year. Is expected to move across the watch area this evening, continuing to the first half of Monday. Rainfall amounts of 1 to 2 inches, possible with localized amounts of 3 to 4 inches. I think they issued that statement before they finally threw up their arms and said, hey, this is going to be a lot worse than 1 to 2 or 3 to 4. And they issued that special flash flood emergency. All of that happened 1 year ago on this day in 2023.
Well, I just pulled up the so this was Sunday, July 9th, 2023.
Yes.
And this is the 12Z surface map. There was some sort of frontal boundary running across New York State, but they analyzed a low in central Pennsylvania. And then all of a sudden they reanalyzed the stationary boundary, and then they reanalyzed it again at 18Z. How do you go from, look at these three maps in succession? Okay. I'm sorry, I screwed that up. Let me get it back up here again. So I don't, whoever drew this particular map at, um, okay,
20,
so at this is the one at 8 o'clock. I got the 12Z map up, should be coming up momentarily. Okay. So it's got the stationary boundary from northeastern New York to central Pennsylvania and then into a low in central PA, and then it bends around to another low in Erie. 3 hours later, okay, 3 hours later, they analyze it this way. With this boundary from eastern Long Island to just, north of Poughkeepsie into northeast Pennsylvania, kind of snaking down into uh, northernmost West Virginia. And then 3 hours after that, there's a low up near Watertown, and another one in northeast Ohio, a warm front from that low in Watertown down to another low that they analyzed over Poughkeepsie. And then that front extended and became stationary over western Long Island. That was at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And then at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, all right, here's the way at least there's consistency. So there was some kind of stationary boundary that Joe that was with a low up in upstate New York and a stationary boundary that ran from that through the eastern Catskills down to about New York City and western Long Island, and it just sat there into Sunday night. So uh, that's about all I can help you with as far as how this happened.
it was a very amorphous, very diffuse type of weather pattern, which must have been very difficult to analyze. And that's why somebody said, well, probably there was a shift change, and someone else analyzed it. That's
Yeah,
certainly
and then
true.
some kind of low developed along the Jersey coast and moved right into Long Island Sound by Monday morning. And so there you have it. That was uh, our version of memories here on the Joe and Joe Weather Show podcast. So on the satellite loop, the east is, has that look of a tropical air mass from Maine down to Georgia, and also you could see the cloud cover and the twisting that's going on in Missouri and Illinois. So that's the what's Beryl, the post-tropical system, the post-tropical low that is moving northeastward to the lower Great Lakes, and the thunderstorms that are developing out in the warm sector across parts of Tennessee and particularly into Kentucky. And then, except for some storms in the Colorado, just a band of storms in the Colorado Rockies down to New Mexico, the West is about as cloud free as you can get. And here's what the radar looks like tonight. Now, we do have some thunderstorms rolling through northern Massachusetts and northern Connecticut at the moment. SPC did point out that this area from Maine down into Connecticut was subject to the possibility of an isolated severe thunderstorm. They had a marginal risk there. And I see a couple of special marine warnings that are up for coastal Maine. That's playing itself out. And then you have this stuff here. and a slew of severe thunderstorm warnings, and then some tornado warnings in the mix too in southern Indiana and north central Kentucky, with a steadier rain back through northern Illinois up to about Chicago, and in northwest Indiana into southern Michigan. And this is all going to be translating into New York State and into New England on Wednesday.
And it's interesting, and I'm sure you'll bring it up in a few moments, the SPC, Storm Prediction Center forecast. And even though a lot of the moisture, a lot of the precipitation is expected to be well north of the New York metropolitan area, they still have a marginal risk of severe weather tomorrow that literally encompasses a good part of the lower Hudson Valley. And, just a stone's throw to the north is that slight risk. And they even talk about tornado potential in the 2 to 5% range. And again, that's interesting because the main track of Beryl is, or what's left of Beryl, is going to be well to the north. You wouldn't anticipate seeing something like that, but for that reason, there's the possibility tomorrow and into probably tomorrow night of some locally heavy thunderstorm activity. I guess the further north you go, the better your probability, or your probabilities will be going up as you go to the north. Notice that New York City and Long Island is outside of that zone of severity for possible thunderstorm activity tomorrow.
And also, they don't have hail in there, but they got a 15% chance of in the slight risk zone of winds, or excuse me, 50 knots or higher. All right, so back to day one, which is tonight. There's the marginal risk in New England. Marginal risk from northwest PA southwestward into northwestern Tennessee and southeast Missouri, and you see that marginal to enhanced risk, and all the severe weather seems to be occurring in that zone, particularly in the enhanced risk, and that's a 10% chance this evening, and of course that's definitely playing out with respect to what we saw on the radar with a bunch of severe thunderstorm warnings and some tornado warnings there in the mix. We'll jump to day three just very quickly because other than general thunderstorms up and down the East Coast and from the Great Lakes southwestward into Texas, and then from there northward up the plains and Rockies, all of these areas are being indicated to have general thunderstorm activity, and no severe weather is being forecast at this time. Now, rainfall. Okay. Um, they've got this arc of moisture coming up for Friday, almost on the backside. It's kind of weird because it's coming around the backside of the Bermuda High, running from North Carolina up and through New Jersey and into the Hudson Valley and Connecticut and Massachusetts. That's where they have the inch-and-a-half line, and it looks like the inch-and-a-half line touches New York City. So we have that, and then several inches possible southeast Virginia, eastern North Carolina. With the Beryl remnants, and bear in mind with what you see in Indiana, Illinois, Michigan, this is on top of what's already fallen. So they have a inch and a half to some 3 inch amounts being indicated here. And then through upstate New York and into northern, central and northern Vermont, central and northern New Hampshire into Maine, an inch and a half to areas of 3 inches plus. And Joe, this is one of those situations. It's July. Somebody gets under a cluster of thunderstorms that develops and gets embedded in there and sits over them for a while. This is sort of a general broad brush view, but you and I both know that in situations like this, somebody could wind up with double the forecast amounts, and the same will
Absolutely.
probably hold for the area from Massachusetts down to coastal South Carolina. Same
We
thing.
saw that last year, and we will, in all likelihood, see that again this particular summer. Incidentally, if you look at the upper air, Joe, there was some kind of a closed system that was well off to the east of Florida, or will be by tomorrow afternoon. Then that kind of disappears for a while.
All right. I
And
have
then
the map up on the screen, so I'm showing everybody. Go ahead, keep going.
and then as that Bermuda High, flexes its muscle, and that closed system tries to get closer to the coastline, the upper high kind of cradles around it, and that in part may be what WPC is indicating, that the moisture from that closed system offshore gets literally funneled in or funneled up the coast in the direction of the Outer Banks of North Carolina, the Virginia Capes, on all the way up into the immediate New York City metropolitan area as we move into Thursday night and on into Friday. And that may be the reason why they have that heavy zone of rain, not affiliated with the remnants of Beryl, but again with more of a offshore upper levels disturbance interacting with a strengthening ridge of high pressure right off of the eastern seaboard.
And in fact, it's also aided along by you've got the ridge offshore, but you still also have that uh, shortwave trough, the upper low in northeast of Lake Huron, and the trough that hangs back across the Great Lakes down to Illinois. And that thing is just getting squeezed right in the middle. And you can see there's the little closed height line there off the North Carolina coast. This is at 1 a.m. on Friday. And then it just sort of it loses it, but it has that alleyway there right up along the coast ahead of the shortwave that's coming out of the lakes and sliding eastward. So uh, that'll be interesting to see what comes out of that because that could be one of those things where um, somebody could wind up getting clobbered with more rain than being advertised.
And I'm thinking about this, this is one of those situations where, let's say, I don't know, 50, 60 years ago, if this does indeed happen Thursday night and Friday, where we get some periods of briefly heavy rain and maybe even some flooding concerns, it's one of those situations where 50 or 60 years ago they'd be scratching their head and saying, "Well, where did this come from?" Because obviously the upper air maps are showing that offshore system well offshore from Florida, and the increasing strength of that high pressure ridge offshore, and these two systems combining, so to speak, to set the stage for that flow of tropical moisture up in our direction. They never would have been able to. I don't think they would have been able to forecast, or if they did, it would be a very rough forecast. 50, 60 years ago, as opposed to the ability now of being able to at least look at this and say, okay, here's what we anticipate for the end of the week. There could be some significant heavy rainfall. So,
All right,
and of course, and
and along, go
naturally,
ahead,
of course, if it does happen that we get heavy rain Thursday into Friday, that the majority of people will say, "Well, this is from that hurricane that they had last week in the tropics. This is all due to that hurricane. That's why we're getting all the heavy." And it will have nothing to do with the remnants of Beryl, but a completely different system.
yeah, and looking at the satellite loop yesterday, it was a pretty obvious that was a cold core upper low there. It's not as obvious at the moment. It's still there. Just the showers that are out there are sort of all over the place rather than being concentrated in one area or seeing an obvious hook. This is not the type of system that's going to warm up and become a tropical system. Just to bear in mind, it's a cold core upper low that we're dealing with here. And with all right, so we did the WPC. So overall, the models backed off on this idea of a fairly deep trough coming in early next week, and instead now it has a second short wave, so it wants to bring down a deep trough into the Great Lakes for the middle for the latter part of next week, and it would be that you would have to depend on as far as relief is concerned from this humidity. And the other thing I would say is that after this short wave pulls out on Friday, the one in the Great Lakes, as that pulls out uh, we're going to be in a fairly warm west-northwest flow aloft, and when I'm looking at the surface, I'm thinking, we could probably have a couple of, not that it hasn't been hot, of course it has, but Monday and Tuesday of next week will be playing with a west wind
Yeah,
ahead of a cold front. You got to wonder whether that could be either one or both of those days where it could be, you know, might be some 100-degree readings popping up here and there.
I had on my Facebook page, I put a forecast each day. And on Monday, I have sunny, hot, humid, and a slight chance of a late day thunderstorm, and about as high a temperature as I predicted so far this summer, 94 for the lower Hudson Valley. And if that's a 94 for the lower Hudson Valley, you can bet that for a place like Newark or some urban location like New York, maybe LaGuardia Airport, upper 90s to near 100 would not be out of the question. So Monday, yeah, thanks again, as you pointed out, Joe, to that, more of a westerly component of the wind. And Tuesday probably too. We'll
Yeah,
probably
Tuesday. Yeah.
a couple
I
of
mean,
really hot days coming up next
it's
week.
there's several isobars here from the west, so it's not like if it's a 5 mile an hour west wind. I mean, there might be it might be a steady breeze from the west, and yeah, there is a trough and a weak front that comes down with some storms late in the day on Tuesday, from northwest to southeast. Maybe that's a severe weather day. I'm not sure yet, but uh, with the west wind, I would think, Frank R. You're asking about next week. We're pretty much putting it on the table here that it probably, I think, maybe wind up with days that are actually hotter than what we've seen the last couple of days.
Yeah, it may actually be that we get even hotter than what we have seen, and maybe a slight dip in the dew point. I'm not saying it's going to be a dry heat, but man, I tell you, it's
Oh,
going
go on, Joe. Say it's a dry heat. Say it.
to.
Um, Well, I'll go to the digital forecast just for laughs. For Monday, as far out as it goes, um, they've got dew points mostly around 70. Some places 69, some places 72. So, but these are the digital forecast is usually early. And the thing is, I mean, I'm just randomly picking dew points on Thursday. Of course, we already know about tomorrow, so you know that the dew points are going to be into the 70s again. Uh, Dew points on Thursday will be around 70. And Friday, the dew points in now remember Friday's the day that we're going to probably have that arching area of rain coming up. Dew points in the mid to upper 70s in Connecticut, the Hudson Valley, Massachusetts. It's a little lower, but still pretty high, low and mid 70s across central and south Jersey, and into southeast PA. So you're probably looking at temperatures that'll be in the 80s if it's raining and dew points in the 70s. You want to feel like you're in a tropical rainforest? I think Friday's probably going to be the day for that. And then after this goes out, Saturday we've got dew points in the low 70s. Sunday we've got dew points. Oh, there's a few upper 60s on Sunday. Big whoop. And then back up into the low 70s on Monday. I mean, this is just the temperatures are bad enough, but when you have day after day of dew points in the low to mid 70s in metro areas now, I mean, I have that here where the dew points, always in the upper 60s to around 70, but I'm in the mountains and it just feels different. And the humidity doesn't feel as oppressive here as it does when you're dealing with it in more of a high populated metro area, like how much of the area is along the I-95 corridor. I mean, that's just awful.
Horrible, horrendous,
It is
hellacious.
hellacious. Lots of adjectives.
Yes.
So anyhow, the GFS would have you think, just for laughs, I don't see how much rain does it do on the, it probably doesn't do a ton. Let's go accumulated precip. I mean, it gives 2 inch amounts to Eastern Virginia, Eastern North Carolina, and 3/4 of an inch to an inch and a quarter uh, for New Jersey, Eastern PA. So, look, you want to use your imagination. You get a good thunderstorm in that mix, you probably could wind up with double that, and that's how it'll play out. So the next issue is going to be when those early next week, uh, with anything that's coming down in the northwest flow that could set off some storms. So maybe it doesn't look like much happens on Saturday. Actually, they have some lingering rain Friday night to Saturday, early Saturday morning, and then maybe another shower or thunderstorm in the evening. More numerous Sunday evening, little upper trough going by, and then the next one probably will be late on Tuesday, and that's one that looks like maybe that could be perhaps a severe weather threat. And then there's another front you have to wait for to come through on Thursday with some showers and storms, and then after that, next Friday, that's when you maybe get some dew point relief.
Yeah, I think if you're just looking at the most recent short-term models or even mid-term models, the real bit of relief that we're all looking forward to in terms of a drop in the dew point temperatures. I mean, a really significant drop may, he puts that word may in quote marks, may arrive next week on Thursday. I'm talking about Thursday, the 18th of July. Today, of course, is the 9th of July. So we may have to put up with this in terms of high levels of humidity and heat and any other mashugana that makes you go crazy or whatever. You'll have to put up with that for at least another 8 or 9 days before we do get a true shot of relief. Maybe, hopefully, God, I hope, sometime later next week.
Oh, and the west wind, by the way, will probably bring out the horse flies. Oh God! All right, let's do a little Briller Jeopardy on this Tuesday night. Are you ready?
I am all set to go.
Okay, so we're on foreign cities, so we're going to continue that tonight, and we're going to start with Helsinki, Finland, Joe. Helsinki, Finland. The
High
average
temperature.
average high temperature for the month of July.
Well, Helsinki is pretty far north. I'm not sure if it's latitude 55 or latitude 60 degrees north. So I'm going to say the average high temperature for Helsinki probably will be, not probably, but my best guess would be 60 degrees Fahrenheit.
That is actually a fair distance too low. Michael McGuire, I think we should ring the bell for Michael McGuire because he said 72. Okay. And it's, so close. And he was the first person to put up a number there. It's so close. 72. Rich Rothmansky says 71. Uh, the and Patrick Darcy says 74. The actual answer is 73 for Helsinki, Finland. Now, next on the list is Istanbul, Turkey. Istanbul.
Well, if Helsinki is 72, I would say Istanbul probably is a lot higher. I will say 91.
That is actually too high. But Rich Rothmansky at 85. You could ring the bell for Rich, and also we'll get an honorable mention of Lord Kate at 84, and Norm Roberts also saying 85. Next is Lisbon, Portugal.
Portugal. How about how about 81?
Uh, oh, you're in Snake Country, Joe. Very close. Very close. Um, I'm just waiting for somebody to to get it here. Uh, Lord Kate, ring the bell for Lord Kate and Latex Dreams at 82.
There you go. Bell ringing. By the way, Joe, if you get a chance, give me a sharing capability
Sure.
because I want to. There was a major story due to the extreme heat yesterday here in the New York area.
All right. Well, let's finish Briller Jeopardy, and then
Yeah,
then you can put it up. Next is London, England, not London, Kentucky. London, England.
London is very funny. London can have years where they can be exceedingly hot in July, but also I think this year in particular, they're unusually chilly with even a bit of rain. I've been watching the Wimbledon matches and they've been talking about that. So I will say for London, 70, 70,
Say
70,
it. Say it.
75.
No, Lucas Belmore, Maggie P, Frank Scalera, all getting it at 74. Give them a bell ring, Joe.
Here comes the bell.
And finally, Madrid, Spain.
Excuse me?
Madrid, Spain.
Oh, Madrid, Spain, which I have been. I've been to Madrid. I think it could be a pretty warm spot. I'll say 82.
Too low. Too low.
Oh,
Michael McGuire at 92 is too high. Craig Carlberg and Rich Rothmansky at 89 in Snake Country. Charlie P at 88 gets a bell ring.
you want the bell ring? I'll give you the bell ring. I'll give
One
you the bell.
more bell ring.
Ding, 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 ding. There you go.
All right, go ahead. You got the boards and share what you were going to share.
This was a uh, this was a significant story yesterday in the New York area because of the extreme heat. I don't know if you heard about this down your way, Joe. But
Oh, yes, the Third Avenue Bridge.
the Third Avenue Bridge. This video, by the way, courtesy of our friends at CBS News, Channel 2 in New York, taken from their traffic copter. And the problem was, they really didn't fully explain this. I mean, people thought, oh, the heat, it got stuck in that position because of the heat. No, not necessarily. The problem was that when the bridge opens, there's some locks on the bridge that allow the turntable span to move and spin. And when they tried to spin it back into position, they realized that because of the extreme heat, the metal had expanded just enough so that it would not allow the bridge to, lock into place. And so what they had to do is they had to get fire boats to spray water onto the bridge and onto the metal. And they had to do this not just for a half an hour. They had to do this for 4 hours before they had cooled the metal, the steel, enough so that they were able to finally close the bridge. I should point out, I saw a report this morning, and there was a news anchor on one of the local news channels that said, well, that bridge has been around since, according to my research, it's been around since 1898.
No, it hasn't. It's
Yes,
I was
yes,
just going to bring up the fact that they replaced that bridge and the Willis Avenue Bridge, and
correct,
I was not happy when they did
correct.
that.
Now, you see, there's something that the bridge is open, and yet there are people on the span. And that was that was always a big no-no. I remember, Joe, when I was very, very young, and I would occasionally, my grandmother or my grandfather, they would take me on a walk up First Avenue to the
Hmm.
Willis Avenue Bridge. And I remember you could walk on the Willis Avenue Bridge,
Yeah,
and there were two signs on the pedestrian side of the bridge. It said, "All persons must leave the draw when the gong sounds." Obviously, you can see here that the gong must have sounded innumerable times to open the bridge because there are people who are standing on that draw span while it's in the open position. But I guess they were allowed to be there in order
yeah.
to,
I've walked both those bridges also.
yeah, that you can see here the chopper, Channel Two's chopper, giving an overview of I think down below, immediately down below now is the Willis Avenue Bridge. And I don't know why they're zooming in on other various locations or whatever, but it has nothing to do with the Third Avenue Bridge being open or stuck. In any case, that was a major story yesterday. People unable to get over the Third Avenue Bridge because the Third Avenue Bridge was stuck. And I remember distinctly 3 years ago, the same thing happened with the Hutchinson River drawbridge. That was not a turntable bridge, though. That's what we call a bascule bridge, where you have two leaves that open up.
Right.
And that happened 3 years ago. They couldn't close it because, again, the heat expanded the steel and they just couldn't lock it into position. And so they had to get fire trucks to go onto the bridge and spray their water. And it's amazing. It really is.
Oh no, yeah, it is. I'm just reading on the chat board. What would you do if there was this much traffic in your neck of the woods in Georgia? Well, I will tell you, it happens because of the fact that the roads here, except for Highway 76, which runs through town, which is two lanes on either, on each side. All the other roads are just single lanes. So when something somebody breaks down, or if a truck breaks down on one of those single lane roads, you're there for. They clear the roads fairly quickly, but you are there for a while. So let me put it this way: I wouldn't be happy.
And by the
Okay.
way, the day after that 1936 extreme temperature of 106 degrees in Central Park, the day after, the Triborough Bridge opened officially. And I'm sure it was not 106, but it was very close to that, very, very hot. And the thing that amazes me about that bridge show is the vertical lift bridge that's over the Harlem River. That when we were kids, there was a lot of marine traffic that bridge would have to go up and down innumerable times. Have you ever thought about how they did that? That the center span of that bridge, the Triborough, oh, excuse me, pardon me, the RFK Bridge. That's what it's now known as.
Yes.
The center span of that lift bridge weighs 2,050 tons. And in order for them to lift that bridge, inside of the two towers on either side of the center span, there are counterweights, two giant blocks of cement that weigh 1,000 tons. And they are lifted up and down via pulley by 200 horsepower engines. So when it's time to lift that center span, each of those 1,000-ton counterweights have to come down from the tower in order to lift the center span up. Now, my question is, how in the world did they manage to move 1,000 tons of concrete, serving again as the counterweights for that vertical lifter? How do you move 1,000 tons? That's
Yes.
it's mind-boggling to me. And don't forget that bridge was built during the height of the Depression, 1936, 35, 36, 34. I mean, that's crazy. And I'm still to this day, I still don't know how they were able to do that. Can you put a 1,000-ton counterweight on a boat and sail it up the
Listen,
Harlem?
they do amazing things with these engineering marvels that they put up.
Unbelievable.
Yeah,
Now here's the
it
now here's,
is.
now here's the other thing. What happens if one of those cables? I mean, I said it's 88 years old. Those counterweights have been up in that tower now for 88 years. But what happens if the cable breaks and you suddenly have 1,000-ton counterweight suddenly coming down?
Oh, they'll be a pretty big splash.
Yeah.
You know,
Oh,
one of my favorite bridges is the one that has the after the Third Avenue Bridge and before the 155th Street Bridge is the Park Avenue Bridge
railroad.
where the Metro North goes over and the railroads go over. And because that's one of those where I think it lifts straight up,
It
you
lifts
know.
straight up. It's different from the Triborough because there are not one but two spans.
Right.
So you have like one side of the spans going up and the other side not quite in line with that, still at a lower level. And so it's weird uh, when they do raise that bridge up.
Yeah, definitely. All right, we'll wrap it up here. Always interesting conversation that we have here on the Joe and Joe Weather Show podcast, which is brought to you by Tempest by Weatherflow, the revolutionary Tempest weather system. Join the fastest growing observing weather network on the planet if you get one. The link is on the description to this podcast. The coupon code is
The coupon code, I'm just reading something on the chat board. Coupon code is summer 2024. And if you say or use that coupon code, you will get, now I'm turning it around at the other Joe here,
10% off.
10% off. They did Frank Scalera on the chat board saying, you guys lived in Throgs Neck. How would you spell it? Is it 1G or 2G
It's
for
one.
Throgs Neck? Throgs Neck officially has 1G in it. And that was due, I think, to Robert Moses when he built the Throgs Neck Bridge. He didn't want to spend the extra money to add the extra G on the sign, so he's
All right.
1G instead of 2. But most people I know, they use a second G for
Yeah.
that.
Well, there's a street in Throg's Neck, Throgmorton. So I don't know who Throg is. I mean, unless it's
Well, yeah, that was Throck.
Mr. It was named after Mr. Throgmorton, whoever he
Yes,
was. You
yes.
know, probably some sad sack that's happened to be in the right place at the right time. What's your name? It's Throgmorton. Oh, okay, Throgmorton. We'll call it Throg. All right, gotcha. All right. We'll see. Oh, by the way, there's no show this Thursday. Um, the executive producer, Dr. Ruben Fairchild, wherever he is, just probably jumped out the window. But there's no show here on. There's no show this week on Thursday. So after tomorrow, we'll be back on Sunday. All right. So just give
Yes.
everybody a heads up.
And there you go.
Okay. Nighty night, everybody.
Good night.